And greetings, ladies and gentlemen. What is going on? Thursday, October 28th. You're listening to not just the Locked On Padres podcast, but it is a crossover special with Mr. Steve Granado of Locked On Angels. Sir, how are you doing on this fine? We're recording on a Wednesday, but how are you doing on this fine weekday?
On this fine Thursday that isn't a Thursday. I'm doing great on this Thursday. I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on. This is a first crossover for me, so exciting.
Yeah, very exciting, man. We haven't talked before. And again, everybody, thank you for making Locked On Padres and Locked On Angels your hashtag first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Look, I wanted to have Steve on, one, because, look, it's the off season. You know what I'm saying? And it's very hard to do content sometimes. You know what I'm saying, man? So like I'm always just like looking for people, and I love doing crossovers. But I especially love doing crossovers with new folk. And you are indeed new. You joined Locked On maybe within the last month or so. At least that's what it feels like. Maybe. Yeah. My apologies if you secretly been here for 5 months and I didn't realize. I don't think so, but I could be wrong. So first of all,
I could have been here for that long. I could have been here for this long, but I had to go through all the, the Locked On legalities to get here. But yes, it's been about a month, maybe about 5 weeks.
A lot of paperwork. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess like introduce yourself, man. Like what's going on? What brought you into being intrigued by this team? What is your fan origin story? Mine has been discussed ad nauseum by Padres Twitter a lot, and how I haven't been a fan of them for my whole life. So I'm a traitor and what have you. But kind of, how'd you get into the Angels, man?
Born here in California, Orange County, LA County, right on the edge. So I mean, literally like lived in LA County, went to school in LA County, but like ate dinner in Orange County. Like literally like I'm right on the edge of the two counties right here. So grew up half an hour, 20 minutes away from Angel Stadium. Grew up an Angels or a Dodgers fan for like a couple hot years when I was like baby, but don't remember, that's like diaper. Don't remember at all. Mm-hmm. My dad got upset with trying to get to Dodger Stadium, so he's like, let's start going to Angel Stadium. Back when the Rams were here, and the A was on the different side, and it's a completely different ballpark at that point. But yeah, that's when I started going to Angels games and doing the little league days and things like that, and been with it for what is it now, about 20 plus years, 25 years or so since that started happening. So guess that makes me a lifer. I guess that puts me right there. And I live right here in Anaheim too, so I'm right down the street from the ballpark. So it can't get much better than being right here, unless of course we were still playing here in the late October. But that's a different conversation.
Yeah, it's slightly different, maybe just a little bit. Look, and let me tell you, with October, I mean, both of our teams. Now, granted, I will say your team looked like it was eliminated a lot sooner than I was, so I don't want to act like I understand.
Yeah, as soon as Mike Trout slide. Right when Mike Trout made that slide, that's when we were eliminated.
Yeah, it was just kind of like, look, and as my voice cracks like heinously there, it's just kind of been, the Angels are one of those teams that has their own way of misery. It isn't as like wretched and cursed as, say, the New York Jets, the Cleveland Browns, the New York Mets, and to their own degree. Because they have won a World Series, at least this century, I think, if I'm getting that
barely,
wrong.
2002.
Barely won a World Series.
Actually, you know what? As we're recording this, I know this comes out on Thursday, but as we're recording this, today is the 19-year anniversary of the Angels World Series winning Game 7 over the Giants.
How about that? It's almost like No, I'm just kidding. I didn't play that whatsoever. Yeah. I didn't even realize whatsoever.
Well, I'm going to stop you there. I'm going to stop you there, dude, because there is misery on this team, dude. Like, okay, maybe it's not as long standing.
It's not in the F tier, is what I mean. You guys are like in the D tier,
Sure. We're give me a letter grade D. Yeah, thank you.
So it's not quite as heinous as those teams, but for you, like, before we get into what we're going to talk about and why this relates to the Padres with certain manager candidates, we will get to that in a second. But like, I'm just kind of wondering, covering this team, how do you do it? What is your bit? What do you go for? What is it that you did a great episode the other day talking about that one dude, what's his name? Shohei Ohtani, and like the best opposing broadcaster calls of his home runs. Yeah. That was really great. But just in general, how are you going about your workflow and everything? How's your regular work life going? How's, I don't know, Halloween going? Whatever.
Oh, so it's the off season? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
But
it is. It is just a little bit.
yeah, I mean, it's Shohei content as hard as possible. That I mean, this the second someone says Shohei Ohtani, it's like all of Japan wakes up and turns on the episode. So
Mhm.
that is yeah, we're covering Shohei as much as we can. He obviously just won the Commissioner's Award last night, 2 days ago. As you're watching this, if you watch it the day it comes out. So that'll be talked about and all that kind of good stuff. But yeah, it's we're going through the minor leagues and things like that. We're talking with all the minor league broadcasters, see what the development is like right now in the franchise. I'm lucky to know a couple of the broadcasters personally, so that makes it reaching out a lot easier. Just shoot a text, go, hey man, can you talk for like 30 minutes, fill an episode for
Yeah.
me. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now, is just trying to one thing I'm trying to really do with Locked On Angels is create the culture around the team. And I've actually praised the Padres for how well they've been able to do it in such a short amount of time, because the Angels and Padres weirdly kind of have some of the similar like lifespans, weirdly enough, here in Southern California, and how
Uh-huh.
there's not a ton of history, at least really good history. I mean, it's like the Angels have Rod Carew and the Padres have Tony Gwynn. And like we had Troy Percival and you had Trevor Hoffman. It's like kind of like we have a couple of these guys. We contended a couple of times, have some really bad demons in the past, and the lifespans are fairly similar, Padres and Angels, and fan bases, region. Like it's really kind of odd how similar these two teams are historically. So what I've been trying to do with Locked On Angels, and again, what I've been praising with the Padres recently, is creating the culture around the team and creating the culture around the ballpark and the historical factor of it all, which is what I've always seen from the Angels side of things has been lacking. You look at teams like the Dodgers, your beloved Dodgers, I'm sure, how well they've been able to, with the dark past at that ballpark, been able to kind of turn it around. Not necessarily give the reparations I would like, but have been able to turn it around and create the culture around the Mexican American community. And the Angels have kind of been identityless for a few years. The O2 team was a hotbed. The Scioscia era, as we're obviously going to talk about Scioscia today, was kind of a hotbed of the team, and just like the golden era of this team. And now we can kind of look back at it with rose-colored glasses. But that's been my main priority is creating the culture, talking about food in the area and things to do and pre and post and that kind of stuff. So that's the long of it. The short of it, Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah, but the short of it, Shohei Ohtani. And look, man,
Yeah.
look, I've enjoyed a couple of episodes that I've listened to and watched talking about ballpark foods. For people who are watching the YouTube, you might be able to tell I'm a big fan of food. Really enjoy that stuff. Really, very much so. And I think you've been killing it. Also, much better background, I must say, than me. I am literally just have a curtain from my that leads out to my porch that is behind me, and then you've got like all these pictures hanging up and all the look at that stuff. I mean, look at it. It looks
This
like
is
a
what happened.
professional studio. You know?
This is pandemic stuff, dude. This is like because I'm a play-by-play broadcaster, and when the
Yep, I was just
pandemic
about to say
hit,
that, yeah. Mhm.
no play-by-play, right? So there was
Yeah,
nothing
yeah.
to do. So I started podcasting. I created an 8-part docuseries, and then that ended, and then I created a movie podcast, and then here we are taking Locked On Angels. So my
Cool.
career has kind of shifted into podcasting, fortunately / unfortunately. But I still do play-by-play here in the area. So that part of my life isn't gone. So for my regular workflow, if you want to call that a regular job, I still do that as well.
That's awesome. That's a movie podcast. Oh, you got me interested. All right. I'm curious to hear what this is about. But before we kind of continue talking with Steve, guys, let me just take a little bit of a second to talk about something else that is also very cool. It is Rock Auto, and guess what it's about? It's about automobiles. You get it because it's in the name. It's really sick, and there's computers with access to it at home and in your pocket, so you don't have to worry about this being some sort of you got to travel. No, you just use it from right on your phone and stuff. And the best part about Rock Auto is you save time and money when using it. Why choose to spend 30, 50, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? Doesn't make any sense. For example, Honda Odyssey fuel pump, it's $353 from chain stores, while it's only $216 from Rock Auto. That is a deal and a half. I wish I could have got that kind of deal on like my PS5 or something. But Rock Auto is also family business. They've been serving auto parts customers online for over 20 years. They're very reliable. They've got all sorts of parts that you would need, from brake parts, tail lamps, even new carpet. They have everything you can need. So what are you waiting for? Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in their How'd You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. RockAuto.com. And guys, once again, I want to thank you for making Locked On Padres and Locked On Angels in this special crossover your hashtag first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. And as I said, look, it's Locked On Padres. So while I did get, and it is Locked On Angels, well, I really did get excited about you starting up a movie podcast that we might have to talk about at the tail end, how that whole thing is going. Because I'm a big movie guy, especially because this is a long season, man. And I'm just like, oh my God, I can't wait for it to be done. I'm just like officially done for us to be in full off season.
I don't think we have the greatest World Series matchup that people really wanted. I don't even think Major League Baseball probably really wanted this one either. That's no knock on Locked On Braves or Locked On Astros. I know those are hot commodities here on the Locked On Podcast Network, but I'm having a hard finding a hard time rooting for either of them. I'm slightly skewed Braves.
It's so funny. See, here's my so a lot of people are rooting against the Astros for obvious reasons, but I've talked about the podcast. I'm a little bit over it, but that's just me. Like, it's really funny how every time I'm always like, I want the supervillain defeated. So for me, that was the Red Sox and the Dodgers. I hate both of those teams. And then it's just like, but then when you get to the championship, I'm like, all right. I mean, but there's no one that I have a fervent hatred for. So in a way, it makes me actually less interested. You know what I'm saying? So it's like the Super Bowl. I'm always like, oh, whenever it's the Pats, it's like, yes, I hope whoever is playing them beats them. Most often that didn't happen. But, it was just like you would really be really into it. And now it's like, I mean, yeah, I guess I'm rooting for the Braves. I don't hate the Astros as much as I used to. I think we all have to stop pretending that they're the only team to ever do anything nefarious in the history of sports. But, that's just kind of the place we're at. But before we I don't want to go too much on a tangent. We'll save that for the end. We'll save that for the end when we talk about some offseason stuff. But I want to talk to you about Mike Scioscia, and I hate saying that name, and Brad Ausmus, who are two guys that have been rumored to be in candidacy and talks with the Padres for their next kind of, managerial vacancy. Not general manager, but manager, the skipper in the clubhouse. And those are two guys that were with the Angels. Brad Ausmus was a name that when I first heard it, I was like, wow, that's when like Joe Nathan was a thing. That's when like Josh Hamilton was still on the Angels. You know what I mean? Like these guys I haven't heard of in a long, long time. And I'm just curious, what was your reaction to guys who were potentially names that the Padres were interviewing? And then just kind of, talk about like what you felt about them when they were with your respective ball club.
Not to toot my own horn. I figured both of them would be in the running from the get-go because Brad hasn't done anything in a year and Soch just managed Team USA at the Olympics. Mm-hmm. So right away I was like, okay, well, these guys can be two guys. Like that was the first thing when even like the not fake report of Jace Tingler leaving being fired. Shouldn't say
premature report, yes.
Yeah, the premature report where they had to come out and deny it. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like in 2 days, you're going to say he's gone. But even when that came out, I was like, okay, so Soch, because he's very close. And I got to imagine Brad Ausmus is maybe moved back home, but is probably still open to, moving to San Diego. Yeah, I think they'd be interested in moving to San Diego to, manage these teams. So as far as Scioscia is concerned, because I don't know too much about Brad Ausmus. We only had him for a year. We signed Brad Ausmus for a 3-year deal. He comes on to manage in 2019. And then he's immediately struck with like one of the worst tragedies in Angels history with the death of Tyler Skaggs. So he just got thrown right under the bus and ran over 150,000 times. So, and then the Angels were plagued with injuries and they didn't contend that year. And there's legalities and there's all these big old problems. And then he gets fired. So I feel so bad for Brad Ausmus. I feel like he got like the shortest potential end of the stick, right? Like he never really got a chance here in Anaheim. He was signed a 3-year deal. They didn't even let him do the 3 years. They went and got Joe Maddon and said, see you later. So kind of a bummer for Brad Ausmus. Was I a massive fan? I don't even know. I never even got a chance to learn about him. We see the Tigers because they're in the AL. So I saw Brad Ausmus there. I also think it wasn't necessarily his fault that the Tigers tanked because did you see the roster he was working with? Did you see the roster he was working with in 2019 with the Angels and everything he was dealing with? So for Brad Ausmus, who knows? I have no idea what type of manager he would potentially be in San Diego potentially. I know that there was some things made of some early season comments in 2019 that I'm now just remembering off the top of my head where, fans were like, he's not analytical enough. He's not analytical enough. Makes more analytics. And he wasn't necessarily, he was kind of like, well, there's a place for analytics and there's, we work with players and one of
Classic.
those things.
Yeah, I like that
Yeah,
you
yeah,
used the different voice for that. Yeah.
yeah, there's that thing. And to be fair, yes, duh, they are human beings. Like, I'm not some monster.
Yeah. Mhm.
But as far as Scioscia is concerned, he also got the short end of the stick on his way out of Anaheim. He is the winningest manager and the most successful manager in Angels history. No ifs, ands, or buts. He has I think it's over 1,000 more wins than the next guy on the list. He is insanely successful. So it's not even close. 60 years of Angels history. Mike Scioscia will go down as until the next one comes along and goes for 20 years and wins 90 games every year. Mike Scioscia is the greatest manager in the history of Angels baseball. No ifs, ands, or buts. I'll even toss that in without even looking at numbers of the old PCL days dating back to 1890. So I'll go ahead and say Scioscia is the greatest.
All right.
Without even looking, just for fun. But so that's where Angels fans got sour on Scioscia when the Angels started losing. And this is right around the mid 2010s. And, the Hamiltons, the CJ Wilsons, the Vernon Welleses, that era of Angels baseball is when things started turning sour. That more so, and you can ask any fan, is more so on ownership, not Scioscia. I think the Angels fans were looking for a scapegoat, and they didn't want to admit that it was Artie Moreno because he was still tossing all this money and signing these big names, and getting Pujols, and he's getting Hamilton, and he's getting all these guys. But Scioscia was not the problem. And he was one of those guys too that was a little slow to turn towards analytics. So I'm curious if that has to be part of the conversation in every job interview now moving forward in baseball, but that has to be a part of the analytical conversation going forward with the Padres. So if I had to choose, I'd go Scioscia because I have a longer track record and understanding of where he comes from as a manager. He was forever a small ball manager. That was the identity of the Angels for 15 years, was small ball. Then they get the Hamiltons of the world and start going for the fences. So he is a very smart manager. He is a World Series champion, both on the field and in the dugout. Longtime Dodger, was one of the greatest Dodger catchers of all time, won a World Series there, and then came here, and in 3 years was able to win a World Series in Anaheim, and a team that was sub 500 just the year prior. So he is a very good manager. He might be a little bit older. He's not Tony La Russa older, but he is a little bit older. So he's not your young Jace Tingler. That being said, Scioscia is a little bit not super high strung. Like, he's a little looser. He's kind of chill about that kind of thing. He jokes with reporters, and he's kind of, he'll be serious when he needs to be serious, and he'll fight for his guys on the field. But he's a little more even keeled. And at least, again, this is outside looking in. But any interaction I've ever had with Mike Scioscia or watching Mike Scioscia, I don't know what else he could have done in Anaheim to try and turn it around the later of the 2010s. So for my money, he is 100% in the running. I can't imagine that he isn't one of the top candidates right now. And if Scioscia continues his career, again, he coached Team USA in the Olympics this year in Japan. So he's getting back into the swing of things here, quite literally. And I think Padre fans could look forward to him. He's a Southern California dude here. And I think that Scioscia would be a pretty good fit if he turns a little more analytical, which is obviously where the game is at now. He could handle your Tatis Machado flare-ups at the end of the season. He can he could do that. And he's not going to be one to say, at least I would anticipate now that he's probably had a fresh set of eyes now and has, really relaxed and is no longer, in the thick of trying to turn a team around. I think he would be kind of more 3-0, go for it. That's not, I don't think that, or you need to apologize, or that, I don't think that would be, I know those were some of the criticism of Jace Tingler and to my own avail as well. So I don't think that's necessarily going to be a problem moving forward. I could be wrong, because who knows if he's actually completely swung in the other direction. But I think it would be a decent mix of the older mentality of, nose to the grindstone, first to third, stealing, hit and running, that kind of thing, especially in the NL. And then also what I was thinking about is, the NL is probably going to get the DH next year, more than likely. So it's going to be more right at home for him. He wouldn't have to deal with an NL double switch BS. So I think that Scioscia would be a great fit. Long of it there, short of it, yes, Scioscia, even shorter, Ohtani.
Steve, that was incredible. You gave me
Thank
the
you.
full lowdown. I didn't even have to ask another question. It was incredible. Just an absolute 8-minute monologue on all this stuff. The guy knows Angels, man. And it's funny because I agree. I think that what's so interesting about the Padres is like they're clearly casting such a wide net. I talked about my episode yesterday about how the Ozzie Guillen report came out and how they interviewed him last week. And I was like, I don't necessarily know and I also agree with you, by the way, about I've said for a while, but oftentimes the manager's going to be a sacrificial lamb. That's just how this stuff works. It happens in every sport for sure. It doesn't happen with every team, but usually, in my opinion, teams that consistently are firing managers, it's just not a good sign. At least that's just for me. A constant turnover, it usually isn't a good idea or type of vibe, I guess you could say. But with Scioscia and then Ozzie Guillen, I know all the Padres fans want Bruce Bochy. There's something to be said for that. I mean, that Hall of Fame caliber guy. He's won all those World Series with the Giants. He literally was with the Padres and has Padres connections. And it's just kind of like this nostalgia thing almost. Like last time he was managing, Khalil Green was a thing for the Padres and Trevor Hoffman and some of those guys, right? Like, so there's definitely some nostalgia to it, but I think that Padres fans should open their hearts a little bit to some other guys. And I think that Scioscia could be one of them. Even Brad Ausmus to an extent. I think it's interesting, a little younger. The Mike Scioscia just a tad bit younger, but I think that this team, the number one thing that everyone's talking about is, do you need that kind of experience? You allude to the Tatis and Machado kind of flare up, which I think in a bottle, in a vacuum, really wasn't that big of a deal. It's fine. If there's anyone who's allowed to like kind of, have a moment like that with Tatis, it would be Manny Machado, the leader of the team. But there were some troubling things about how the Athletic kind of alluded to the fact that this team had an alarming amount of clubhouse flare-ups. To an extent, I'm like, yeah, that's not a good sign. But to another extent, I'm like, well, I mean, they did have the greatest like second half collapse ever. I'd be surprised if there were a lot of flare-ups in the clubhouse. That would be arguably worse if they didn't have any type of like at some point,
they wouldn't
some
care
person
then.
just losing it. Yeah, they're just like, and I know everyone loses it and gets angry in their own ways. I've talked about this on the podcast. Just because you're the guy that stares at the wall after losing doesn't mean that you don't care as much as the guy who threw a chair through the wall. You know what I'm saying? Like everybody deals with grief and kind of anger in their own way. And that's fine. But I do think that to a degree, it'd be like, I'd be surprised if I was like, wow, that was the only time anyone was like, hey, what are we doing? From being the talk of the town and having Emma Stone attending games to being this team that's just a joke. You know what I mean? Starting Jake Arrieta in baseball games. So I definitely think that like a veteran presence, there's definitely merit to that. Whether or not he jumps aboard the analytics kind of bandwagon, I guess you could say, is another story. But I definitely think I agree with everything you're saying, especially about they kind of just got rid of him and they had to blame somebody. You know what I mean? You got to blame somebody for what's going on instead of the ownership and maybe, general manager and player development and stuff like that. It's like manager. That's the magic seal. You know what I mean? Yeah. We do this in the NFL all the time. Let's just get rid of the coach. That'll change everything. Oftentimes, in my experience, it does not. But before we talk about some more type of off-season stuff, now that we've talked about the managers, unless you had any final thoughts on Mike Scioscia and Brad Ausmus.
Just remember that he's a winner too. Just as that Scioscia is a winner, like straight up. And I know like analytically that doesn't mean anything, but he manages to win and he was, again, a fighter. Like he was there's a thing in Anaheim called the Scioscia face. Hard to say. And it was a thing because he always he questioned every home plate umpire in the history of the world. He always made a face at almost every call. So there's a Scioscia face. So that's as a joke, yes, but as a thing, it mattered. He's a guy that always stood up. He's always, and it was everyone would make a joke of it because he kind of waddled out of the dugout and would run over to try and argue. But he would argue, and he would argue when he felt like it was time. And he would stand up for his players, and he was always on his player side. And when things got tough, people could look to Scioscia. He was always there. He was a great manager in Anaheim. And so if I had to throw my chips in, especially if you're going Ozzie or Scioscia, I mean, it's Scioscia. It's just Scioscia, man. It's him. He's one of the best
Yeah,
managers
he does get
in
that
baseball
World
history.
Series too. In fairness, he's got his own merit. But
Do
I
you
know what you're
really want to
saying.
talk about 2005? Do you really want to do that to an
Hey, look,
Angels
man.
fan?
Look, there are people out
AJ
here being like
Pierzynski.
AJ
AJ
Pierzynski.
Pierzynski. I don't need to get into this at all. Scioscia was there.
Agreed.
Scioscia argued with
Agreed.
Doug Eddings. We don't need to get into this.
It was a little mean. I'm not gonna lie, that was a little foul on my part. I'll throw the flag. Here it is. Just went flying across the screen for those watching on YouTube. I'll throw the flag on that one.
I'm clearly over it 16 years later.
Very much over.
Yeah.
Hey, look, I'm still not over my team, the Chargers, the Jets in like 2008. Like, I'm still not over that. So I absolutely relate to that. But
yeah, they're right here. They're up the street. I don't know what you're talking about.
Before we continue on, guys, let me just talk to you really quickly about betting. That's right, sports. You probably are familiar with that. And we're back and better than ever. A new web interface for the start of the basketball season and more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Now, who do I say when I say we? Who am I referring to? I'm referring to BetOnline, and it remains your number one spot for all the basketball and football action this season. Head to our new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use the promo code that you get just for listening to this podcast, Locked On. Really awesome, guys. But they don't just do basketball and football. They got baseball. Listen to a baseball podcast. So obviously they got to have that. They have NHL. They've got boxing. They've got UFC. They're at some point going to have Oscars futures too. The Oscars, the bane of my existence. They'll have that stuff out there. I know Steve's got a movie podcast, so I thought I'd throw that in there. Guys, remember, BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Steve. Let's thing out, or at least we're almost at the home stretch. You know what I'm saying? Let's talk about the offseason, and just kind of other things. Look, here's what we do. This is what you have to do when you talk Angels baseball. You say and as many times as you can, Shohei Ohtani. You put it in all the SEO stuff. You put it there. You go. You put it on SEO. But I used to think that if you said it audio wise, that it would pick up. So look, I'm not convinced. I'm not saying that I totally I'm just not convinced that they're not the subway that people listen to what we say. Joe Biden. So there you go. Like maybe they pick up that. And what else is trending on Twitter right now?
Amazon.com.
Deathloop, PS Plus, Doc Ock, Lightyear, that new Disney movie trailer came out. I'm saying someone told me that was the case.
Chris Evans? What's happening?
Yeah.
Wait, before we get into the offseason. Is Buzz Lightyear a real person? Did we know this? Is this new information?
No. It's basically Buzz Lightyear. The toy is based off of a real
he's a real person now, apparently.
No, it's not.
I mean, I know Buzz Aldrin. I know.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, it's
in this world,
the toy is based off of what this movie
a human.
is. You know what I mean?
But that wasn't that's not a thing though, right? Until today, we didn't know that.
No, they announced it. But no, we didn't know over the course of the Toy Story movies that there was that Buzz Lightyear was based off of an astronaut. It's almost like Disney just likes doing spin-offs instead of creating new ideas. But anyway,
almost.
It's almost like they're just
I love
they
announced
10,000 things. Yeah, they announced 10,000 things, and some have planes. I always forget that was a movie. They do too. It's like they just announced 10,000 things, but nothing at the same time. Not to hate on Disney too much. I got love for Marvel and stuff. But in terms of some offseason stuff, I think that with your team, it's really remarkable how every single time you sign a guy to a big deal, they become bad. It's truly like a next generation level of curse that the Angels have on getting that. And that's what stinks, because you see everyone's always complaining in baseball about how their team doesn't spend any money. And here are the Angels being like, we keep doing that. And then everybody stinks, from Albert Pujols, who had one decent season, maybe two. Goes from being a Hall of Famer to having, a really bad second half of his career for the most part. Josh Hamilton, obviously Mike Trout, he's pretty good. And then you have Anthony Rendon, who is playing through an injury and all this stuff, right? There's always these guys. They do shell out the money, but there's never enough depth and stuff. I'm curious, what are kind of your initial thoughts on the offseason for your team, the Angels? The Padres is going to be hectic and tumultuous as hell, right? But I'm wondering about your team. What is the kind of outlook, aside from just being excited about when Shohei Ohtani is announced as the MVP for the American League?
We are going to be dueling it out for Marcus Stroman. So Angels, Padres, I am ready to go to battle to get Marcus Stroman. He is one of my favorite players in baseball. I love Marcus Stroman.
Ding, ding, ding. Let's start the bell.
So please, Marcus, I know that Marcus Stroman pays a lot of attention to things. So Marcus Stroman, I'm right here. I'm right here. It is October. What's today? October 27th
October.
in
Yeah,
Anaheim.
everybody listens to this at October 28th. So both.
It's supposed to be 83 degrees and sunny today.
Okay.
We ain't getting that San Diego offshore breeze. We're not getting that cold chill. Come to Anaheim. 83 degrees here in late October. A couple days to Halloween, dude. It's 83 degrees. That's my pitch. Anyway, we'll be duking it out for Marcus Stroman alongside other teams, I'm sure. But
he's a gamer. I'd be really curious to have. I'd love to have that.
I'd love that dude. Love that dude so much.
Me too.
Love his mentality. There's this little thing called pitching that we like to talk about a lot here on Locked On Angels. And
hey, my team too. We didn't expect it, but my team too. It's pitching all of a sudden. Fangraphs
you guys really
after ranking us the number one rotation for the season.
Yeah, you really got screwed. You guys really got screwed this year, unfortunately. And hey, I love the Padres. I grew up, here in Southern California, like I said. So Padres have been in my blood. I used to one of my little league teams was the Padres. I had the old pinstripes, the old Tony Gwynn pinstripes when I was a kid. So I've always been a Padres fan. Always rooted for the Padres at least. Love Petco. Not necessarily a store, but the ballpark. Love that little wiffle ball field in left field. I used to love their lobster melt out in left field. So also side note, Petco.
I gotta visit.
Fix your damn chicken tenders. Chicken tenders at Petco are some of the worst chicken tenders. No, they are the worst chicken tenders I've ever eaten in my entire life.
Really?
Absolutely awful. Maybe it was just me. It was so bad.
It's funny because I haven't been to Petco. I live on the East Coast, which is again, my fandom origin stories is weird. We don't have to get into that now, but like I've never visited, and everyone tells me like the food by Petco is pretty awesome. But you're saying that the chicken tenders
awful
is just
maybe it was just
abysmal. It's F tier,
Maybe just a bad night. Could have been.
But it could have been. It's not impossible.
Yeah. The oil that they fried them in was clearly old, and both the fries and chicken tenders for like $17 tasted awful, and they both tasted the exact same. It was extremely disappointing, and they didn't have ranch.
The same way? How do you make chicken tenders and French fries taste the same way? That's some next level. Like, I mean, it's not the most disparate. It's not like an apple pie compared to a steak. You know what I mean? But like, that's still pretty like remarkable on their part. So come on, Petco. If this is true, get your act together. Come on, guys.
Yeah,
you have a high reputation. Take it to 100%. Don't just be 98.
Micheladas are pretty good though. I'll take a michelada. They're pretty good. Anyway,
nice.
But yeah, I mean, you are clearly set up. The Padres are to have a better offseason and move into 2022 with a better rotation, just by way of getting guys back. The Angels don't have that luxury. They'll have a couple of guys coming back, but it's not necessarily anything that's to write home about. So the Angels got to get some frontline starters, just straight up. No ifs, ands, or buts. Wednesday's episode of Locked On Angels, we talked all about potential landing options for free agent starters. Need 2, maybe 3, maybe 4. Who knows? Like, they need to go out and just get starting pitching. Just no ifs, ands, or buts. And that's been the case for years and years and years. The Angels have weirdly some pretty strong young bullpen depth right now, which is a luxury the Angels have not had in a very long time. So they got a lot of young dudes, a lot of college arms that are coming up through AA and AAA, and that will likely be ready to make some splashes here in 2022. So pitching is going to be the thing. The Angels need a shortstop. If you know of anybody, you recommend them. The Angels need a shortstop moving forward. They might need some catching help, and
shortstop market. So.
Yes, it is. And that's where everyone's scared that the Angels are just going to go spend on Carlos Correa, and they're not going to do that on Marcus Stroman, Kevin Gausman, and, Mike Scherzer or Clayton Kershaw or whatever it is going to be. Or Noah Syndergaard, by the way. Yes, free agent. You forget about Noah Syndergaard.
Robbie Ray. Yeah, all of a sudden an afterthought, and now he's probably going to win the Cy Young, maybe. So,
forget about all this stuff. But yeah, I don't want to run too long. I know we're pretty over on time here, but
don't worry about it.
Yeah, but pitching. We've been screaming it for the last 10 years. We haven't had a true ace since Jared Weaver. I say this every day on Locked On Angels. So if you like me screaming about pitching and the options that the Angels can do, hop on over to Locked On Angels. That's my pitch.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Yeah, there you go. Excellent work on the pun there. But I will say, like, I'm a little bit of of a jerk. Like Steve, I'm just going to come clean. I'm a little bit of a jerk. And I make fun of fans who are always doing the thing where it's like, we need to get a number one starter. We need some great starting pitching. Because, like, yes, so does every other team in the league. So I like classifying it in tiers. Your team really does actually desperately need starting pitching.
Desperately.
The Padres are the type of team where, like, if you signed a Desclafani, for example, and that was your only big, like, starting pitching move, that's not that bad. They're like in the C plus B minus tier of needing pitching. You guys are in the triple A plus tier where it's like, I was watching what's his face, Dylan Bundy this year. I watched a couple games of Dylan Bundy pitch. I was like, oh my God. I was just like, this is horrid. This is hard. Obviously,
guy,
you guys
man.
have Ohtani, who we're going to mention really quickly because I have a question for you. But like,
Sure.
you guys are definitely in that tier. So while I do make fun of fan bases that are always clamoring for starting pitching, acting as if that's some bold, wow, you should be the manager too. They feel like Brad Pitt and Moneyball when they say that, right? So they're just sitting there like, yeah, this is what we need to do, get another starting pitcher. But I definitely think with your team, they absolutely need that. With the Padres, you do have Clevenger coming back. You still have some guys. Snell showed some signs towards the end of the season that I think genuinely were totally legit. I don't think he was
as
just
soon
on a
as
hot
I
streak.
traded him for my fantasy team. As soon as I traded him, he goes and almost throws a no hitter. So that was really good. Thanks,
You did it twice. You almost did it twice.
Oh, I know.
was like, what is going
Both of
on?
them right after I traded him.
Unbelievable
Thanks,
stuff. Fantasy sports are cursed. But to wrap up this show, my last question for you is this. I call them the freakalytics crowd, the freaks that use numbers to justify anything as a sport played by humans, and they overthink things, having takes like, why do we use interceptions as a stat? Dumb stuff like that. I know that's football, but I digress. My last question for you is this. Do you get annoyed at all at the freakalytics crowd saying that it's Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is the clear MVP? How does that make your blood boil? Because people are just not simply acknowledging that we had a dude do something that no one has ever done in the history of this league, really. How much does it drive you insane?
One, love Vladdy Jr. We have so many connections to him. Vlad Guerrero, the only Angel in the Hall of Fame ever. I mean, there are former Angels, but the only one with the Angels hat. He is the only one. So as soon as we found out that he's got a crazy home run hitting son, we're chomping at the bit. He didn't come here. How did that happen? I don't know how the Angels couldn't convince to get Vladdy Jr. I have no idea. So that's number one. I love Vladdy Jr. to death, and I'm not the first one to say this. Any other year, it's him. Any other year, but this is where I come at here on the Shohei front, Javier. Is every MVP season could be the only year a guy ever does it. Not everyone's Mike Trout with multiple MVPs. We have no clue if the same Shohei Ohtani in 2021 shows up in 2022, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27 till the end of time. We have no idea. We have no idea. If he gets hurt, if he has a career-ending injury, all those things can happen. So to be on the camp of going, oh, well, if he does it again next year, then this is why I was so mad in 2012 when Trout didn't win the MVP and they gave it to Miguel Cabrera instead. Hey, no knock on Miguel Cabrera, but Trout was the MVP that year. And, and if you want to go back further, Ryan Braun was not the MVP Matt Kemp was. So, and Matt Kemp never got an opportunity to win another one. So that's where I come at, right? Is these guys, who knows where the career is going to go? It could go completely sour. It can skyrocket. Who knows what the ceiling is for Shohei? We have no idea because we don't know what to expect anymore. So that's where I go, look, we may never see that ever again. Ever. Shohei could absolutely never do that again. And he even have admitted it himself, going, I don't know if I can do that again. Like, that was pretty ridiculous. Even he knows it. So I think that's where it's like, who won Best Picture in 2008? And you go, oh, I don't know. And then it's some random movie, and then you see who lost, and you're just like, whatever. I don't know movies.
It's like I'll help you out on that front. If Shohei Ohtani wins, this isn't like, say, Crash winning against Brokeback Mountain, where everyone's like, what are you talking about? What is going on? Your Crash is not even good. This, it's a tough beat. You know what I mean? There's one famous Best Picture year when it was Forrest Gump, Pulp Fiction, and The Shawshank Redemption. Forrest Gump won. I don't think Forrest Gump should have won, but it's not like it was some awful person
Yeah,
that like
sure.
Forrest Gump was great. And I think that it should have probably gone to Pulp Fiction. That's just me. It's really close, but they're all
Yeah.
great movies. I actually have some issue with a little bit of the subtext of what's it called, Forrest Gump, but it's so good. So it's not like this is some awful beat. Vlad, like
Sure.
this is one of the great players ever. This is more than a Forrest Gump. This is like an all timer. You know what I'm saying? This
Yeah.
is Goodfellas. Like this
And he's
is.
gonna win a
I
Silver
just don't
Slugger. It's
understand
fine.
that thinking. Yeah,
He's
it's
gonna walk away
cool.
with a Silver
It's
Slugger.
great.
He's gonna win like best. He didn't win like best offensive
Yeah.
player from Baseball America. His awards are
He
coming.
didn't
Like
have to
it's
field
fine.
as much. That matters. Guess what? That
Yeah.
matters. When you take this into account.
But
The guy did both.
Shohei's the
I just don't
MVP,
think it's
dude.
that deep. Okay.
How can
Yeah,
you say
100%.
Shohei isn't? Like you can make an argument that Vlad Guerrero Jr. is the MVP, but you can't make an argument that Shohei Ohtani is not the MVP.
Yeah, exactly. Could you say, I think Vlad's a better hitter? Yeah, of course you can. But that's the cute thing about this, isn't it? Isn't it?
Yeah.
It's that
That's the whole thing. You're missing the point.
That's
It's
the
right
whole
over your
thing.
head.
You're missing the point. But before we kind of relitigate that over and over, because that's been driving me crazy and being involved in the baseball world, it's just how many people who keep bringing up the Vlad thing almost as if they're doing a bit and just trying to be contrarian. It's almost like that's how this whole business works sometimes.
Almost.
You know what I'm saying? Shout out Stephen
How
A
you
with the
get
Joe
clicks.
Burrow take the other day. Shout out Stephen A with the Joe Burrow take over Lamar the other day. But Steve, this has been a blast. And everybody, thank you for making Locked On Padres and Locked On Angels your hashtag first listen every day. Steve, really quickly, what is kind of some things that people expect upcoming on your podcast?
Next week we have our full minor league week. We were talking to every broadcaster and throughout the Angels minor league system, and even talking to Chris King, who is the voice of the now high A Tri-City Dust Devils, which were formerly the short season A Tri-City Dust Devils of the San Diego Padres. And we talked about the Padres a little bit in that. So if you're looking for that interview and you want to get a little Padres nuggets, that's right there on Tuesday. I was in that league in 2016, and Chris and I became friends. And you know, we got to see Kyle Quantrill pitch in that league, which is to this day top 3 prospects I have ever seen. Ever.
Wow.
Kyle Quantrill was stupid good at short season. I mean, it was no one could touch him. Nobody could touch him. I think we got like a hit off him. It was ridiculous. I was in the Rockies system. So Kyle Quantrill still one of him alongside some like Braves pitchers and stuff like that. And it was like Cal Quantrill and Dylan Cease were like the best guys that year and some of the best arms that I've ever seen. Those are like 1 and 2, however you want to slice it. So there are some nuggets of that on the Tuesday episode. We talk a little bit about some old Padres prospects on the Tuesday one. But yeah, we got a lot of good stuff over there. And if you're a Shohei Ohtani fan, we're trying to cover Shohei at least once a week. That's how we get the views, baby. But yeah, that's what we're rolling with usually here moving forward. And we got our food and drink guide. If you're ever coming out to Anaheim and you want to catch a ball game, you want to catch Angels Padres, check out our food and drink guide. We have pre and post game spots. That's all on my YouTube channel. I'm sure you can find it. Just look up Locked On Angels.
Awesome stuff, man. Locked On Padres and Angels, your first listen. Now, really quickly, let me just say, make your second listen Locked On MLB Prospects. Host Arm Layton, he's a prospect encyclopedia and a good buddy of mine, and he's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. It's free and available on all platforms. Guys, Steve, folks, peoples, viewers, whatever words you want to go by, whatever it is, we're all inclusive here, obviously on the Locked On crossovers. I hope everybody's vibing. Really excited for the rest of the World Series. And Steve, it's been a blast talking to you. And you guys are not getting Marcus Stroman over us.
Okay, well, we will meet and duel it out on the dueling grounds.
Awesome stuff, man. Everybody, remember always stay faithful.